Hey, what's up everybody, Nexel here. Today we are playing Kingdom Hearts Union Cross, and we are going to use this video to talk about these upcoming Foreteller medals that are going to potentially be breaking the game with their new strength, their new abilities, things like that. So first of all, shout out to Roboloid and Ulti who were able to get these translations for us, meaning that I was able to start working on my analysis yesterday. So thank you so much for getting these out. A lot of people appreciate it. You guys do great work, and I hope to see greater things from you towards the future. So what I want to use this video for is strictly to talk about the medals themselves. So I don't really want to talk about the banners. I know we got this tweet recently showing us that we are getting the banners on September 1st, but I don't want to talk about the banners until I can get a full picture of them. So I want to know, what are the draw odds? I want to know what's going to be in the pool. So lately, we haven't been getting the newest supernovas in our banners, so I wonder if they're going to throw them in here. Are we going to get access to Dark Riku potentially? Are we going to get access to Kingdom Hearts 3 Xion? Are these going to be available in the pool, or are they not going to be? So that's going to affect kind of how I'm going to see these banners. So I want to talk about the banners in a separate video. Right now, I really just want to talk about the medals. So we have 5 medals to talk about, all of them with very interesting aspects to them. But before I get started, there's a few things that I want people to note on these just right off the bat. So the first thing is that these things have huge amounts of strength, with the minimum being around 33,000 strength after chips and dales. That is a very, very high strength to have. That trumps most of our medals right now that have about, the highest one I believe is FFRK Sephiroth at 31,000. So this is even better than that. So this is one thing that I'm kind of actually concerned about, because back in the day when they increased the medal strength for a lot of supernova medals, it brought them up to on par with like pretty much the other supernova medals. Now they're breaking that again by introducing this power creep where the new medals have high strength, they're gonna be much higher multipliers, and they're essentially gonna potentially just replace all the previous supernova medals. So this is something I was kind of fearful of, because we used to praise this game. Like when they did that, when they increased a lot of the supernova strength to bring them all up to par, we were praising this game on how they were being receptive, on how they were making older medals better. But now they're starting to, with this new power creep, kind of shove them in the backstage right now. So it makes me kind of worried, because we recruited a lot of new players within the past few months. There was a lot of jewels going around. There were a lot of events. We were starting to say, like, it's great that they're giving us a heads up on what's coming up for each month, but I'm starting to get concerned that if they're going to power creep the game again, then it's just going to be the same problem. We're going to go into this up and down scenario where we talk great things about Kingdom Hearts Union Cross, and then we talk bad things about it, and then we talk great things about it again. So I don't want to keep doing that. I want the game to be at a very steady, consistent, it's good, it's gonna keep being good, and let's be nice to our players. I don't want this power creep thing to be consistently making Union Cross a bad game. Another thing to note on these medals is that these multipliers are crazy. They are breaking like times 16, times 17. So these things have really, really high multipliers on top of really, really high strength. And not only that, but they're the first tier 10 medals to ever come out into the game. So they are going to have crazy amounts of damage associated with them, with tier 10 being, I believe, 40% higher than tier 9 right now in terms of the special attack bonus. So that is a lot of extra damage. So high strength, high multipliers, and they're tier 10. And they all have relatively low gauge costs, with the lowest being Invi at a 0 gauge cost and the highest being Aced at a 3 gauge cost. That is really, really low when you put it into perspective of the previous supernova medals like Guardian Form Sora or like Angelic Amber. Those had like gauge costs of about 5 to 6, so those were really high. These are really low, so it just keeps making me think they're gonna keep replacing the old stuff, and then it's just like, well, we're resetting the game almost. Like, we built up to this point, we got a lot of new players, let's reset the meta and then potentially break the game again. So I don't want that. That's something I don't really want right now. But overall, before we start talking about the medals, these things are going to be super strong, and as the first tier 10s, I'm kind of excited to see what other tier 10s come down the way, if they're going to introduce any new mechanics, things like that. So let's go ahead and jump into our first Foreteller medal. So let's put these away and let's pull up are Ava. So Ava is going to be the first one we talk about. I am going to be reading off a note sheet that I build. So if I'm not looking at the camera, it's nothing personal. I really just want to make sure I hit all the points. All right, so the first thing is that we are going to start off with a multiplier of times 11.5 going up to 16.69, which is dependent on how high your HP is. That's really not a relevant damage plus condition because we have things like Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A and HD Xion, which will restore your HP to maximum. So as long as you start your Keyblade rotation off with one of those two medals, you're always getting back to maximum HP regardless of what you were hit with. So if you have 300 HP, if you have 1 HP, if you have 2000 HP, you're going to be brought up all the way back to max, and that's going to fill this condition for damage plus based on how high your HP is. It only requires 2 gauges, which makes it really easy to pair with extra attack. So even if you don't have a skill attached to it that decreases the SP gauge cost, 2 gauges is nothing. Even with extra attack, 4 gauges is nothing. That's a very easy to recover from scenario with things again like Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A, with other medals where you're potentially going to have SP gauge 0, SP gauge 1. So 2 gauges is a really low gauge cost even with extra attack, and getting extra attack on this medal is important because the next ability that we're going to talk about here. So when you activate this medal special attack bonus, you're going to give medal strength plus 1000 to all the medals downhill from this. So all the medals that come after this are getting plus 1000 strength. There is no condition to this, so it doesn't matter if they're upright reverse, it doesn't matter if they're power speed magic. They are going to be getting this bonus regardless. It's not upright based, it's not reverse based, it's not PSM based. All medals downhill from this are getting plus 1000 strength. And if you have extra attack, all medals downhill from this are going to get plus 2000 strength, which is really good when you think about it. When you think about the meta recently and you think about things like PvP, passing content, a lot of it is rotating around this idea of increasing the medal's base strength. And this gives all medals downhill from it plus strength. That is amazing. This is the first medal to be able to give all of that downhill. So normally, as of right now, we're kind of limiting ourselves in terms of what's going to be getting boosted after. So for example, Ultimate Form Sora only gives upright medal strength. Kyrie B only gives upright medal strength. Kingdom Hearts 3 Aqua only gives magic strength. So it's very specific, but Ava's the first one that gives everything after plus medal strength. That's really good. That's actually really interesting as a mechanic because that's pretty broken in my personal opinion. This makes it a great tech on a lot of things like the bad guy breaker. So in the bad guy breaker, you could have it in the 3rd slot, and then you can have like a reverse speed medal in the 4th slot, and then you can have an upright power medal in the 5th slot, and all of those are going to get the plus 1000 strength from Ava's ability. So that's just really good, the fact that it gives everything downhill from it. It makes it techable in scenarios where you're using it first or where you're using it in the 2nd slot and it doesn't even match. So even if you put it on a speed slot, all the medals downhill are still going to get plus strength regardless of the orientation or the color of that medal. So that's just really good. It adds a very solid tech to this medal here. Unfortunately, though, a great ability is balanced out by a pretty weak buffer set, in my opinion. So this medal, when you activated special attack, only increases general strength, upright strength, and magic strength by 10, which is really low. But when you pair it with like Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A, it buffers out and then makes perfect strength buffs. But it only decreases upright defense, making it kind of weaker than other medals that are able to decrease magic defense, that are able to decrease power, like PSM defense, that are able to do general defense down. Ava is missing a lot of that, so she needs to be buffed prior to hitting her medal, otherwise you're not getting the maximum amount of damage. So that's I feel like one kind of hindrance to this medal. But if you can buff it beforehand with things like Kyrie A or another like magic medal that's able to fix out the magic buffs, this can actually be really good. They're all really good. But that's one con to the medal. Another thing I do want to talk about, just kind of bouncing back to that medal strength plus 1000 thing. Remember that as this game moves forward, we want to be hitting for weakness. So they had this update where if you hit an enemy for weakness, so if you're hitting a power enemy with a magic medal, if you're hitting a magic enemy with a speed medal, or if you're hitting a speed enemy with a power medal, doing that super effective damage is going to do ×2 the amount of damage that a normal attack would do. So let's say you're fighting a power enemy with a power metal, that's ×1 damage. If you're fighting a power enemy with a speed metal, which is not very effective damage, that's going to be hitting for ×0.95 multiplier. But if you're hitting a power enemy with a magic metal, which is super effective damage, that's ×2. So ×2 amount of damage is really, really good. So while I talk about putting this in something like Fairy Stars or Stroke of Midnight, remember that you want to be hitting for weakness, because that's how you're going to get the most damage out. One really solid setup that I could think of, in my personal opinion, would be having Ava in the 3rd slot of Fairy Stars, followed by Angelic Amber, followed by Ultimate Form Sora, because remember that Ultimate Form Sora will always hit for weakness, so it's always going to be getting that ×2 damage towards the enemy. But yeah, don't try and get tricky, because while I say it increases the strength of all the metals downhill, you want to, for the most part, try and focus on like one color at a time. So a power setup, a speed setup, or a magic setup. You don't want to be kind of just bouncing all over the place with your attributes, because you could potentially be missing out on a lot of damage that could be very easily compensated by super effective damage. So I just wanted to jump back to that really quickly. Talking about the last ability on this metal, next metal, Group Attack. So we've actually seen this ability before on Nominate EX Plus way back in the day, and that's the only other metal, as far as I can recall, that has that ability to make the next metal do group attack damage. So let me go ahead and pull up the Nominate, and let's go ahead and hide the Ava for now. So as you can see here, next metal, Group Attack. This is the first time that we saw this sort of ability, and unfortunately it really didn't see a lot of play. The most play that this saw was going to be in Coliseum, where people put this and then they followed it up with Supernova Terra Aqua Inventus, because at the time Supernova Terra and Aqua Inventus had a super high multiplier. It still does at around like 17, I believe, but the problem was that it was a single target metal. Having Nominate EX Plus before that and then applying that group attack thing to Supernova Terra Aqua Ventus made that 17 multiplier spread damage. So it made it no longer single target, but now it hits all the targets, which was really, really good for passing Coliseum back in the day. But unfortunately, again, it didn't really see a lot of play after that. That's because when it comes to single target metals, it's really hard to find something that is worth making a group attack next over like something else that hits multiple targets. So let's look at what we have in terms of single targets. I want to talk about this really quickly. Pirate Sora and Dark Baymax, this is not going to work well for them, because remember that the condition for damage plus for Pirate Sora and Dark Baymax is 1 enemy or 0 parts left. Even if you use Ava to make Pirate Sora do group damage, if there's multiple enemies in that group, it's still going to be hitting for ×1 multiplier, which is really, really weak. So that's just the condition of Pirate Sora, and it's not going to be negated by having Ava before it. So just keep that in mind if you're super excited to use it. Pirate Sora's condition defeats the purpose of having Ava before it. So just keep that in mind. In terms of single target metals, again, we have Monster Sora, which isn't particularly fantastic. We have the Marluxia, which I guess can be pretty good, because if it hits for critical damage, that's going to be 19.21. We have tier 8 metals, which we're not even going to talk about. Let's actually like change this so that we're only looking at tier 9s. We have Illustrated Aqua A, Illustrated Ventus A. So it's like there really isn't a lot of good metals to make group attack, in my personal opinion. Especially with tier 10s coming out, they have to come up with a pretty solid single target tier 10 metal, like the Aced that we're going to talk about later. So if you can pair Ava with Aced, that's going to be crazy. But as of right now, there really aren't a lot of great single target metals that you need to apply group attack to. I'm pretty sure because of this metal, they're going to release a few supernova metals that are single target attackers so that you can use Ava. But as of right now, that ability just really hasn't seen enough play for me to call it super game breaking. It's very, very gimmicky when you're able to get it off in the right scenarios, but I haven't seen it become crucial in any sense of the word. I haven't seen it be so ridiculously game breaking. That might change with Ava, because unlike Nominate EX Plus, Ava does not have fixed damage. She is a high damage output metal. So that might change with Supernova plus Ava, but we'll see how it plays out. I'm willing to just kind of wait it out a little bit. Moving on to talk about her Supernova attack. So this is the way you're going to be able to decrease general defense, upright defense, and magic defense by 10, which again pairs well with Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A, rounding you out to perfect upright and magic and general attack and defense buffs for the rest of the turn. But the big problem with Supernova attacks, and while I talk about the Supernova attack balancing out the lack of buffers in the main attack, remember that you only get one activation of Supernova attacks. So this is really, really good if you only have to fight one enemy, but odds are we're gonna get like gauntlet quests down the line where you have to fight multiple enemies. So for example, high score challenges, you're not able to get off Ava's Supernova attack every single group of enemies. You only get it once per the activation of that entire quest. So that can be a little bit limiting. I don't want to talk about it as the greatest selling point ever, but if you are entering a fight where you only have to fight one enemy or one group of enemies, this is a pretty solid way of balancing out its weak buff set is with its Supernova attack. One big thing that I want to point out about the Supernova attack is that it resets count on demand. So let's say you're fighting an enemy and then you get knocked out, HP recovery procs, and then you're on your second rotation of just medals, and you notice that that count of the enemy is starting to get very, very low. You can activate Ava's Supernova attack and then reset it back to whatever it was, allowing you to kind of continue your attacking. So that's actually really, really good that you can reset count on demand. You don't need to fix your medal setup so that it resets counts or increases count in a specific area. You just, bam, pop open the Supernova attack and then it resets the count. So this can be plus or minus based on what you're trying to do. So right now, I really think that recovery buffing, if you haven't seen that video, check it out. I think that recovery buffing is very, very critical to pass a lot of good content, to be dealing those high outputs of damage, and being able to reset count can potentially impair that. Because let's say you have a red counter enemy, so remember that red counter enemies, the counter goes down by 1 every single time that you hit it with an attack that doesn't have count plus minus 0 or count plus 1 or something like that. So let's say you get it down to 1, and then you want to just tap the enemy so that way you get knocked out, but your buffs don't reset. You keep all your plus 15,000 strength, just as an example. Being able to reset that count back to 5 kind of interrupts your ability to do recovery buffing. So I know that that's kind of like a hard concept to grasp. I wish I had like an example that I could show you, but just keep that in mind that it kind of messes with recovery buffing if it worked improperly. However, it can actually work in your favor where if you have a lot of medals that increase count. So let's say the enemy has a red counter of 2, meaning that if you hit it twice with medals that don't affect count, or with medals that don't have count plus minus 0 or increase count, let's say it has again a red counter of 2, and then you have a bunch of medals that increase the count, so it brings it up to 10. If you reset the counter with Ava, you bring it back down to 2, and then you could potentially get that recovery buffing off a little bit better. So it kind of works in a lot of different ways with recovery buffing. That's a lot more advanced technique that I'm really talking about there. But just keep that in mind that resetting count on demand is a pretty decent utility tech to have. Overall, it's a really decent medal that has potential right now. I don't want to say it's super broken. I don't want to say it's super fantastic, because we don't really know how the next metal group attack is going to pan out. We don't really know how metal strength on a tricolored blade is going to be versus a monocolored blade where you're hitting for super effective damage always on an enemy versus kind of trading off between some super effective damage and some not so effective damage. So there's a lot of potential in this metal. However, I don't see it as particularly game breaking. It's probably the most unique out of all the Supernova Foretellers that we got right now, but I'm kind of wary about it. So right now, I think it's a good medal. I think it's actually a great medal, but I don't want to just kind of hold my breath on it right now. All right, moving on to the next Foreteller, we are going to talk about Era. So looking at Era, the first thing I noticed about this medal, it has a times 16.5 multiplier flat. There are no conditions that you have to meet in order to hit that 16.5 multiplier. So it doesn't matter how high your HP is, it doesn't matter how many enemies there are, it doesn't matter how many gauges you have left, this is hitting a times 16.5 multiplier flat, which is only 0.5 away from Pirate Sora and Dark Baymax at their highest. That's wild. That's like crazy. I feel like Dark Baymax and Pirate Sora were almost kind of like a ploy for people to buy before these medals came out, because that 16.5 multiplier is menacing. It only requires 1 gauge, which is really, really great, meaning that extra attack won't be a problem on this medal. So if you have extra attack, it's only going to cost 2 gauges. That's still really, really low. That's actually ridiculously low. It has a great buff that pairs super well with Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi A. So remember that Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi A only increases your upright buffs by 7 and decreases the enemy's upright defense by 7. So with Era being able to bring your upright strength by 8 and decrease the enemy's upright defense by 8, that rounds it out perfectly after Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi A, bringing it to plus 15 upright strength for you and then minus 15 upright defense for the enemy. So that's really, really good. I'm glad it's 8 because that rounds it out pretty perfectly. It increases count, which is again a good or a bad thing depending on how you see it. Again, talking about recovery buffing and how it's able to increase your strength to crazy magnitudes. It can be a plus or it could be a minus. So increasing count is always a good tech to have, but if you're trying to go recovery buffing, maybe it's going to make things a little bit more complicated. It increases upright metal strength, so that is very, very similar to Ultimate Form Sora. It's literally the same amount, increasing upright metal strength by 1500. That's a pretty decent number to hit, considering that you can put Era on like the first slot of Fairy Stars, and then have all the medals downhill from it or downstream from it, get plus 1500 strength. That's a really, really decent strength to give. And then if you have extra attack on it for 2 gauges, you're giving everything downstream from it plus 3000 strength as long as it's upright. That's really, really good. Oh my goodness. Like, we all know how Ultimate Form Sora is running around giving everyone plus 1500 to 3000 upright metal strength, and that thing has been kind of running rampant through the format right now. I've been using it to pass the August Big Bonus Challenge. We use it in Coliseum. It's a lot of strength to be able to take on those higher level enemies. So this is a really, really good ability, being able to give upright metal strength. Talking about the next piece of it, which is 10% chance to ignore target's defense boost. I really don't think it's great. It's nice to have. It's definitely a bonus to the medal for sure to have that. But think about it this way. So it's a 10% chance, and the medal deals 1 hit. So that means 10 activations of this medal is only going to proc that target defense boost break once. So even if you had Kingdom Hearts 3 Lee with extra attack, and then you followed it up with Supernova plus Era with extra attack, that's 4 casts of Supernova plus Era, and there's still a decent chance that none of those are going to be defense break. So with defense break medals, the higher the number of hits, the more likely you're able to get those defense breaks off. Right now, dealing 1 hit pours it all into 1 shot, and if that shot doesn't go off, that defense break is not going off, and you're missing out on a lot of damage in PvP. So 10% is really, really low, and only doing 1 hit can really, really impair it. But man, if it goes off, that thing is going to be a destroyer of PvP worlds. So take it as it is. I think it's just a nice little bonus, but I wouldn't be banking on it to win me a bunch of PvP matches. Also, it has gauge plus 4, so it's restoring gauges. So if you have this medal and you activate it, you subtract 1 gauge, but you add 4 gauges back. So it recovers 3 gauges, allowing you to have more things go downstream for you. So let's say you're running something that has like a very, very low gauge limit. Like let's say you're running like Dark Gnaw, for example. So being able to have this, that was a bad example because Dark Gnaw's reverse power, but bear with me here. If you have a Keyblade, it's only got 10 gauges for whatever reason. Having Era allows you to do damage and heal gauges so that you can activate more medals downstream. So that's really, really good that it has gauge plus 4. If you have extra attack on this, this is going to restore 6 total gauges That's just, honestly, it's really, really good to be able to restore gauges like that, because that's less to really worry about when you think about it. And this might actually be an ability that comes more in handy in the future, because they might, I feel like having these medals, and after like kind of analyzing them, we're starting to drift away from Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A being necessary in all of our setups. So I think it's really, really good to have this gauge recovery, because a lot of Supernova medals don't have gauge recovery built into their special attack. So just keep it in mind. I feel like we're starting to drift away from Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A, and I feel like that means we're about to get like a new buffer that's coming soon. So be wary of that. I just want you to just keep that in mind. Talking about Ira's Supernova attack, it pairs well with itself because his regular attack plus Supernova gives you maximum strength buffs, maximum defense debuffs. So it pretty much takes care of itself in terms of general strength and then general defense down. It takes care of itself in terms of power strength and then power defense down. Unfortunately, it doesn't balance out with the upright strength and then the upright defense down on the enemy. But again, if you cast Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A before this, rounds it out perfectly to plus 15, minus 15. So the Supernova attack, really, really decent. Again, one big thing I want to focus on this Supernova attack is that it increases your general strength and decreases the enemy's general defense, which is a very, very rare commodity when it comes to Supernova attacks. And it can honestly make the difference between being able to take out certain enemies and not being able to take them out because they nerf your strength or something like that. So just keep in mind, I think that it's a really, really good to have that built in to the Supernova attack. And not only that, but it triggers before slot 1 even activates. So when you're using PvP, when you're using this medal in PvP, it's going to activate right away, meaning that your first 2 medals are going to get that plus 280% special attack bonus. You're inherently starting off with a higher general strength multiplier, and then the enemy starts off with some general defense down. So it's really, really decent to start off with a medal like Supernova plus Ira. Overall, it's probably the best medal of the Foretellers. Well, it's high up there. It's higher up there than other Foreteller medals. It doesn't really have a unique skill, but it has a lot of different techs rolled into one medal. And not only that, but his ability to do one hit can be very, very important for like building Lux, for doing well in high score challenges, for doing well in damage contests. Because remember, the lower number of hits and the higher amount of damage input gives you a bigger bonus score. And like the last damage contest we had, the bonus score was really what separated the players. So Ira has the potential to make really, really high bonus scores come after it. So really, really good medal overall. I really, really like Ira. But let's go ahead and talk about our next medal, which is going to be Supernova plus Aced. So, gosh, what a crazy medal to introduce into our format with 39,000 strength pretty much. That's wild. That's almost pretty much like, it's a little bit shy of 11k strength short of Pirate Form Sora and Dark Baymax. That's really, really high strength. It's the highest of all the Supernova medals minus Pirate Sora and Dark Baymax. Out of all the Foretellers, this is the highest amount of strength. So that's a really, really crazy amount of strength. Single target makes him very different than the other Foretellers. So while he gets a very, very high strength, a very, very high multiplier, he's only hitting one enemy. So really, he's really good at sniping. But unlike Pirate Form Sora and unlike Dark Baymax, he is going to get that multiplier even if there are multiple enemies. So let's say you have to enter a battle where there's a Barrier Master, and you need to be able to take it out. You want to get rid of that thing right away. Having Supernova plus Aced is going to be able to focus in so that you get rid of that Barrier Master first, and then you're able to take out the boss that it's accompanying. Whereas if you had Pirate Form Sora, even if you targeted that Barrier Master alone, you're only doing that ×1 multiplier damage. Aced is not limited by a damage plus condition that is based on the number of enemies. So as long as you're able to restore your HP, again with something like Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A or HD Xion, you're going to be able to hit that 17.31 multiplier, which is higher than Pirate Form Sora and Dark Baymax. That's crazy. That is absolutely wild, thinking that we have a medal running around like this that has a very easy condition to meet to hit a multiplier like that. Let's see. it doesn't have any inherent buffs. So it doesn't give you general strength, it doesn't give you power strength, it doesn't give you upright strength, it doesn't decrease the enemy's general defense or their upright defense or their power defense. But it does give all power metals plus itself, so power metals downstream of it plus itself plus 15,000, which is really, really respectable. Because if you have extra attack on this thing, not only are you getting 2 really, really heavy hits, but you're also getting 3,000 power strength for all the metals downhill, making it great for things like Fenrir, for Treasure Trove. So that's really good that it gives power metal strength, because again, increasing metal strength is the new meta right now. If you're able to do it correctly, you're able to overcome a lot of different enemies. So while it doesn't give buffs, as long as you're able to pre-buff it before with something like Supernova Plus Era or Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A, as long as you're able to buff all the way until the point where you get to Ased, it's going to be hitting for nasty amounts of damage. Just absolutely crazy. The big downside, yeah, again, is that it has to be buffed prior hand. So you're likely to see him more so towards the end of the rotation, like in the 3rd slot onwards, where you've already gotten all your buffs off, so that way Ased is good to go. He is able to take out very, very high HP enemies with high amounts of defense. Alright, just note one thing for this medal that makes it different than some of the other foretellers is that it affects count, which we've talked about count a lot in this video. Affecting count is plus or minus based on what you're going for. But when it comes to using recovery buffing, you need a means of forcibly decreasing your enemy's count, and this is able to do that. So let's say your enemy that you're fighting has a red hit counter of 2. So remember that the red counter, again, every time you kind of nick the enemy with a metal that is able to affect count, it's going to decrease it by 1. So let's say, again, it has a hit count of 2. You have Supernova plus Ased in your pet slot with extra attack. You do the 2 hits. The enemy has the potential to knock you out. You'll revive with HP recovery, but you revive with all your buffs. So I keep talking about recovery buffing. If you haven't seen that video, please, please, please go watch it. Understand the mechanic, because it's going to be very, very important for how we carry on in this game. But the fact that, again, I keep saying HD, Supernova plus Ased is able to affect count can play in your favor based on recovery buffing. Its Supernova attack increases count by 2, so in case you don't want to be affecting its count, you just use the Supernova attack, bump up its count by 2, and then even Ased with extra attack, it's going to negate it. Essentially, the Supernova attack adds count, whereas the Ased medal is going to decrease count. So you can either get like a net 0 count, or you can get a -2 count or a -1 count based on if you have extra attack on the medal. So its Supernova attack is able to balance it out just a little bit here. Overall, it's a fantastic medal with that single snipe ability that actually pairs dangerously well with Supernova plus Supernova plus Ava. So remember when we talked about Ava, its last ability is next metal group attack. And what's single target metal that has a very, very high multiplier? Ased. So if you can make this 39,000 strength metal with a 17.31 multiplier hit all the enemies, and then not only that, it got the buff from Ava, so it's getting plus 1,000 metal strength, and then it gives itself plus 1,500 power strength. That's a lot of damage, hitting a lot of enemies. Unfortunately though, while I think that's a great setup, there's not a lot of Keyblades that support it. So one of the few scenarios where I thought we were able to use something like this is if we go, for example, let me go ahead and remove this so you can kind of see my screen here. So if we're looking at Stroke of Midnight, and then let's just take these guys out for now. And we're going to use our tier 8 Foreteller medals as kind of like our graphic demonstration here. So let's grab our Ava. If I could find her. Okay, so let's just say this is Supernova plus Ava. And then you have to have something like Angelic Amber, if we can find her. Okay. And then you have Ased bringing up the tail here. Like, do I have Ased? Here we go. Like this. So the Ava will proc, the next metal becomes group attack. Angelic Amber is obviously copying the HD Aced, or I'm sorry, Supernova plus Aced, making it a group attack. So that's one scenario where it works, but the downside to it is that Amber is not getting Aced's strength, so it's kind of a hard scenario to work with. But if you're able to make the Ava Aced combo work, that thing is going to be hitting for nasty amounts of damage. So Aced, again, very, very big sniping metal. Alright, moving on to the next Foreteller metal, we are going to talk about Supernova plus Gula. So his damage multiplier is times 11.5, ranging all the way up until 16.59 based on your HP. Very, very similar to Ava, which again shouldn't be much of a problem because of metals like Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A or HD Xion that restore your HP all the way to max. So this really isn't too much of a problem unless you're not running Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A or HD Xion. It only costs 2 gauges just like Ava, which again is very respectably low. And then its first ability increases speed metal strength by 1500, which is really, really decent. It's really, really decent because all the metals downstream from it are going to become stronger, so that makes it really good. If it has extra attack, all speed metals after it are going to be getting plus 3000 speed strength, which is really, really decent. Unfortunately, its buff set is pretty subpar, only able to decrease general defense, upright, and speed defense by 10. Again, it's still good because decreasing general defense is something that's kind of hard to come by when you compare all the Supernova metals, but not being able to increase his own buffs means that you have to come into this metal prepared with your own strength buffs, with your own upright buffs, your own PSM buffs. So you definitely need to pre-prep before going into the Gula metal. Let's see here. Note that just like Aced, it does not ignore count. So this metal does 3 hits, and those 3 hits are going to affect the count. So if you're fighting an enemy with a blue hit counter, so remember that the blue counters go down with every single hit as long as the metal is capable of affecting count. So when you activate Gula's special attack on a blue counter enemy, it's going to decrease that blue count by 3. Which again, going back to count, going back to how important they are for things like recovery buffing, can work out in your favor. You can use Gula at the end of your Keyblade rotation to reset yourself so that you have all your strength buffs, the enemy has all their debuffs. So really, really decent metal for recovery buffing technique. Let's see here. So the Supernova attack, talking about this, because there really wasn't much to talk about with like his special attack in general, but the Supernova attack is really, really solid, being able to increase speed metal strength by 4,500, which makes it a very, very solid speed replacement for Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie B. So let's do some math here. If you use Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie B's Supernova attack, that's plus 5,000 upright strength to the metals in the rotation. If you have extra attack on Kyrie, that's going to be plus 6,000 strength. So plus 6,000 strength with Supernova, Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie B's. Let's actually pull it up so you can kind of get a visual. Visuals are always nice. Let's see here. Okay, so let's put Gula away for a bit and look at our Supernova Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie B. So again, activating its Supernova attack and then having its regular special attack with extra attack go off, that's plus 6,000 upright strength. When we look at Gula, activating his special attack, his Supernova attack gives you plus 4,500. Activating his special attack is plus 1,500 more, so that's plus 6,000, making it even with the upright buff that Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie B would have given. So that's really, really good for speed setups here. Let's see here. The Supernova attack also increases upright and speed strength, but it lacks general strength, which is arguably harder to recover from, because if you lack general strength, you're missing out on a lot of damage. So kind of a subpar buffing when it comes to the Supernova attack. The Supernova attack does also offer some gauge restoration. Again, Supernova attacks are a one-time thing, so don't be reliant on the Supernova attack to continually restore your gauges, because you only get it one activation per quest. So really what makes, in my opinion, what makes Supernova plus Gula really good is actually Ultimate Form Sora. So remember that Ultimate Form Sora, while it ignores attribute, is still an upright green metal, meaning that it is going to get solid buffing from Gula. So let's say you had your Sleeping Lion. So let's go ahead and pull up my Sleeping Lion here. Let's put that away here. So let's say you have Gula in this second slot here. So let's go ahead and grab our tier 8 non-supernova Gula, just so you can kind of see. Let's see. Here we are. And then it's kind of a bad meta call doing this, but you can have the Beagle Boys in this slot here. So let's see if I can find them real quick. Where are y'all? Here we are. So let's say you had something like this. You would get some procs of the Gula, so that's plus 1500. You'd get it again from the Beagle Boy, so that's plus 3000. Activate Gula's Supernova attack, that's plus 7500. And then you go into Kingdom Hearts League, going into the Ultimate Form Sora, so that's 9000. Ultimate Form Sora, 10500. So I feel like really what makes Gula good is Ultimate Form Sora, which kind of like hampers his overall utility for Keyblades in general. Being able to only do speed kind of inhibits his ability to be useful in other setups. But overall, Gula again is a pretty decent tier 10 to have. Plus 5,000 or plus 4,500 speed strength is nothing to laugh about by any means. It's just it's really decent in my personal opinion. All right, moving on to our last Foreteller. So we are at a long video right now, but I hope the explanation has been good. So let's move on to our last Foreteller to wrap up this video. We have Snack Mom Invi as the final Supernova Foreteller that we have to talk about here. So Invi is a very interesting Foreteller. So first of all, her multiplier isn't as spectacular as the other Supernova medals, with a multiplier of 13.65 to 15.4, which is going to be based on the number of enemies. So if you have multiple enemies that you're fighting, we're hitting that 13.64. If you have only one enemy, you're hitting that 15.14. But when you compare it to the other ones, that's actually not super great. So when we look at Gula again, remember his damage plus is based on higher HP. Super easy condition to meet to hit that 16. When we look at Era, it's a base 16.5. So even if you're fighting multiple enemies, 16.5 multiplier. When we look at Ava, again, it's based on how high your HP is. So 16.69, very easy AoE multiplier to hit. When we look at Invi, it's 13.64. So that's actually pretty weak when you're fighting groups of enemies in comparison to the other Foretellers. So that's just one thing to note, is that the multiplier isn't as great as the other Foretellers, but there's a lot of good things packed into the Invi here. So first thing to note is that there's a 0 gauge cost. That is really decent. That means that even if you have Pirate Form Sora, and then you poured all your resources into Pirate Form Sora, you have no gauges left after its activation. Because Invi costs 0 gauges, you can still activate her special attack bonus. Her special attack, not her special attack bonus. You can still activate the special attack even after using Pirate Form Sora, which is just really decent tech. You don't have to have gauges in order to activate this Invi. So if you have extra attack on this thing, that's perfect, because having extra attack on a metal that costs 0 gauges and doesn't consume additional gauges guarantees those 2 attacks are going to go through. So you're definitely getting the first proc, and you're definitely getting the second proc. You don't need to restore gauges in between the 2 procs. The next thing about the metal is that it increases magic metal strength by 1500, and it effectively covers all the buffs that you need, essentially. So increasing magic metal strength by 1500 is really good. You've seen how people run around with Kingdom Hearts 3 Aqua, being able to increase their magic metal strength to crazy ridiculous heights, myself included. But the big thing I feel like is really its ability to cover pretty much almost all the buffs. It increases general strength, it increases upright strength, it increases PSM strength, so all the attributes minus reverse are getting buffed. Not only that, but it decreases the enemy's general defense, decreases their upright defense, decreases PSM defense. So it covers the enemies for almost all buffs except for reverse. So effectively, Invi's a fantastic buffer. If you get extra attack on this, that's perfect. It covers all your upright buffs, all your PSM buffs, all your general attack, general strength and general defense buffs. So Invi covers all of that at 0 gauges. That's crazy. As a tier 10 metal that does crazy amounts of damage, Invi is a really, really good buffer. Its count ±0, again, good or bad depending on how you see it. Personally, for this format, it's kind of bad because you want to be able to have access to recovery buffing. But again, based on how you see it, down the line, recovery buffing might go out of the way. They might fix it. They might be like, oh, we've realized players are using this technique, so we're just going to nerf the technique altogether. So count ±0 is good or bad based on how you see it. It restores gauges by 3, which is really, really great because that's an instant +3 gauges. If you have extra attack, that's an instant +6 gauges unconditionally because it costs 0 gauges. So looking back at the era here, yes, it does increase your gauges +4, but you do have to have the initial 1 gauge in order to activate the metal special attack first. With Invi, because it costs 0 gauges, you're getting that gauge plus for sure. So if, again, you just have the single cast, it's +3 gauges. If you have the extra attack, it's +6 gauges. You're getting that no matter what, as long as you proc the metal special attack. So that's just really, really good. Its supernova attack is capable of healing and restoring gauges. Invi is a great buffer metal. Like, this is crazy. It's able to restore HP on command, it's able to restore gauges on command, and then when you get to the metal itself, it's increasing your buffs, decreasing the enemy's debuffs, and then decreasing the enemy's debuffs. That doesn't make sense. Double negatives. It casts debuffs on the enemies. It restores gauges. This thing is a crazy buffer metal. It is absolutely amazing. It's a really great metal because it's an offensive replacement to Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A. So while its buffing and its ability to heal, its ability to restore gauges isn't as strong as Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A, as a whole package, remember, you're replacing Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A with a tier 10 metal that has a 13.64 multiplier, costs 0 gauges, and it increases magic metal strength by 1500 after itself. That's crazy. I can see a lot of people wanting to replace their Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A with this Invi. But remember that while we talked good things about that supernova attack, it only activates once, meaning that Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A or HD Xion is probably going to be a little bit better for gauntlet missions where we have to fight multiple enemies. But if you're only fighting one enemy, or if you're only fighting like a small number of groups of enemies, this Invi is potentially able to replace Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A. So that's really spooky to think about, because going back to when we were talking about era, I feel like we're starting to drift away from a format where you need to have Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A or HD Xion. So really, really good stuff. So we finally talked about all of the Foretellers. So we're gonna wrap it up by showing this tweet really quickly and then ranking the Foretellers. So in terms of the going from worst to best, because it's always better to go backwards for suspense, so I think the worst one is going to be Aced because it's single target. I feel like that's really, really hampering it, because if you have multiple enemies, it can be a problem. The single target is great for like sniping. It's got really, really high strength, but its inability to buff itself and things like that kind of make Aced towards the bottom of the list. But granted, don't get me wrong, he's still a really good metal. All of these are really good metals. We're just ranking them in terms of good, great, excellent, and amazing. And then phenomenal. Like, they're all good. They're all good. We're just putting them in comparison to each other. So, bringing up the rear is going to be the Aced metal. The next one up is going to be Gula. So, Gula has a great ability for speed setups. And that's the thing, because if you're restricting yourself to speed setups, that makes it less versatile overall, and the less versatility, the less future-proof the medal is. So if we're only looking at speed setups, really Gula exists, in my personal opinion, for Ultimate Form Sora, which everyone should have. So Gula can still be good because everyone has Ultimate Form Sora. However, moving towards the future, the fact that it's limiting itself to speed setups is kind of a downside for me, in my personal opinion. Moving on to the next one, we've got Ava as our third place. And again, the reason Ava's the third place is because we don't really know how to interpret it right now. Like, is next medal going to be group attack going to be the next broken thing? Is tricolor and Keyblade still going to be really, really good in the future? Or are we going to be focusing more on those monocolored Keyblades? So Ava falls right in the middle because it's hard to determine her future-proofness when we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So that's why Ava lands right in the middle. I love how unique the medal is. I love that it's giving all medals strength. It is going to have that group attack thing going on. But it's just hard to forecast how good Ava is going to be in the future. Its uniqueness bought it its third place slot. The next one that I think is really, really good is going to be Ira. So Ira is going to be the second best foreteller on this list, in my opinion, because he's got so many things rolled into one. Let's go ahead, pull up his slide again. So Ira's increasing upright metal strength, it pretty much is able to take care of itself in terms of buffs between its special attack and its supernova, minus just the upright strength and the upright defense debuff. It has count +1, defense break, restores gauges, a flat 16.5 multiplier. Ira's really, really good. Like, it is undoubtedly a good medal. Like, if you get this and you get good traits on it, it's gonna last you a while. I feel like it's gonna last you quite a bit if you're able to pull this off, because this pairs just so perfectly well with Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A. So I think Ira's a really, really good medal deserving of that second place slot. But just based on how useful it's going to be, how it's potentially able to replace the best buffer in the game, Invi takes the #1 slot. I think Invi is probably the best foreteller that we have in terms of looking forward into the future, because increasing buffs and then decreasing the enemy's, like, increasing your own buffs and then causing debuffs on the enemy is a timeless strategy for this game. This is not going to go out of style, no matter which way we want to see it. It has a 0 gauge cost, it restores gauges, it has a supernova attack that heals you and restores gauges. Invi's got a lot of great stuff, and we know, based on like my top 10 video, based on how we proceed in the format, that buffing is the staple of all Keyblades, of all setups. Buffing is gonna be the staple, and if Invi has all these buffs working for her, she's gonna be staple as well. I just think this Invi medal is going to be great. I'm so glad that Snake Mom is getting a great medal, because if I wasn't Vulpus, I would definitely be Anguis for sure, because Invi's just super cool. Invi's awesome. Maybe I'm a little biased putting Invi towards the top there. Alright, so that wraps up our analysis on all of the foretellers, kind of some pluses, some minuses. If I remember to do it, I will upload my note sheet as like a Google Doc and attach it to the video. But that is my analysis of all the foretellers right now. Again, we're not talking about the banners in this video because we want to talk about them later. But there's a few things that I want to note before the actual campaign launches. So first thing, remember that these are the first tier 10s. There are going to be more tier 10s down the line, and we have no idea what to expect from them. Are we going to get a new mechanic? Are they going to have better abilities than the foretellers? Are we going to get the new foretellers? So are we going to get Lorium and Brain and Scald and Ephemer and Ventus? Are we going to get new foreteller medals that trump the old foreteller medals? They're the first tier 10s, and I can't stress that enough, because that means there's a very decent chance that they can get outclassed. So just keep that in mind, that we don't really know the future. We don't really know how great these are going to be. But as of right now, they're really, really nasty good. Just a little callback to when the last foretellers were released. Remember that they were replaced within 4 months. So keep that in mind. I don't want you pulling for these, and then it's like I gave them such a great review, and then they got replaced really quickly, because last time the foretellers also got replaced very, very fast. remember that when you pull for these, you're looking for longevity. How long is this medal going to be good for? Does it replace anything in the meta right now? That's why Invi ranks so high, because Invi has the potential to be on par with Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A as an offensive replacement for Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A. So look for longevity when we look at these medals. Potentially wait it out a little bit, see what other banners are coming out, see what other mechanics the game might introduce while the foretellers are still able to be purchased. Which leads me into my last point. Don't pull for ha-has. Don't just pull because you feel like it, because unless, you know, it is fun. It is fun to just pull, but don't just pull because, you know? If you want to play this game smart, if you want to do things in a tactful way, don't pull unless you need to. If you're able to pass all the content, if you're able to rank where you want in PvP, if you're able to get to where you want in PvE, you don't need to pull. If you're able to pass all the things right now with what you got, you technically don't need to pull. You only need to pull if you think it's going to be something that's irreplaceable down the line. So, lots of things to note. These foretellers are going to be game-shaking for sure upon release. The question is, how long are they going to be relevant for? So that's my take on the foretellers. Again, this is a long video, but that's because we had a lot to talk about. There's a lot of stuff I wanted to pack into this. I want to give you as much information as possible so that you can make good decisions on pulling for these foretellers. I want you to be able to spend your jewels wisely, because jewels, again, are the best resource in this game. They literally translate to you spending real money in the real world in this game. Jewels are super powerful, and the jewels that I had when I started this game are just as valuable as the jewels that I have right now 3 years later. So just keep that in mind. 3 years, that's kind of an estimate. This is 3 years? Oh my gosh, yeah, it's been 3 years. Wild. But yeah, just keep that in mind, that don't just pull for fun. Don't just pull randomly. If you want to pull for fun, they're your jewels. By all means, go for it. Have at it. Maybe you'll get one early, which is always a fingers crossed kind of scenario. So just keep that in mind. That's all the advice I have on the foretellers for right now. We'll see how it plays out. I'm personally going to do the strategy I always do, where I wait towards the final few days of the banner before I decide if I want to pull for it. So that's going to be my general strategy as we go through these. And that's all for now. So as always, if there are any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to drop them down in the comments below, and I'd be happy to answer when I have the time. But as always, everyone, until next time, take it easy.